What is an underappreciated / underrated visual effect, digital or practical, that really impressed you? My mind, I don't know why this lingers in my mind because it's such a forgettable movie to me. But towards the end of that film, Ender's Game, there's this CG bug that, I don't know, it just blew my mind at the time. 2013, I remember the textures on it looking crazy. I was like, oh, we're so close to that, just photorealism. But I wish it could have been a more memorable film.
I have seen that movie, but I don't remember the specific look of the bug.
It's a very slow, boring film.
Very boring.
I can think of one. There was a very underwatched series on Netflix called Smash, Saturday Morning All-Star Hits. It's really funny. It's kind of like VHS, where you're supposed to be watching an old VHS tape, but there's these TV hosts introducing these cartoons, but they're fake cartoons that they did for the show. But it stars Kyle Mooney, and he plays twins. And they're just going back and forth, doing these taped segments, but it is almost impossible to tell that he's just one person. It's done so well. And it's the camera is moving around in that kind of 90s style and zooming in and back and forth. And they just did it with a motion controlled camera, but it's seamless. It is so good. Like I said, if you didn't know that he wasn't twins, you would think that he was. And that's a very funny show, by the way. I highly recommend it. So that's my answer.
It's just early kind of CGI days, but there's a movie called, I think it was Stephen Sommers' first movie, called Deep Rising, with Treat Williams, Famke Janssen. It's a blast. It's a really, really fun, gory movie. There's a scene, it's they go onto some ship to kind of rob it, and then they find out everyone's dead, and it's this sea monster has gotten on board. And then there's a scene where somebody's swallowed by the sea monster, and it kind of regurgitates him later on in the movie, and he's sort of half dissolved by the stomach acid, and he's still alive. And it's sort of mind blowing how good it is. And it's so disturbing to look at, but that was early days of CGI, and it's still kind of really, really effective.
Okay.
Cool.
I guess based on the phrasing of that question, Neveldine and Taylor do some things practically when they used to work together that people just didn't recognize were practical, and it always kind of fucking pissed me off. At the end of Crank, they're literally flying in a helicopter. He's literally hanging out of a helicopter. And I love the sense of style that they have with the camera work, and just how the directors are really in there and up close, and they're very much a part of the stunt team. The director's on rollerblades hitching behind a fucking motorcycle just to get the shot, and even in their worst received movies, Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, there's a shot where a character flies off of a car basically, and the camera follows them, and essentially they're flying off a cliff.
Oh,
you
yeah,
look at the behind the scenes footage. You can see that's the director holding the camera, basically being shot over a cliff with some safety equipment.
He's got a harness on.
There's a lot of shit that they were doing that was never really fully appreciated, because people just have an expectation of the laziness of how movies are made, and so they don't see when a shot looks like that, they just think oh, it was in front of a green screen. You just flew in front of a green screen or something like that. But no, they're fucking, they're doing some crazy shit, and just kind of went unappreciated, which is sad. But yeah,
I feel like we've lost a lot of that, the kind of marvel of watching something really cool. You know what I mean? Everything is just sort of hand waved now. It's CG or effects or whatever.
Well, it's interesting because you'd think if you were to ask me 10 plus years ago what movies would look like in 2023, I would have thought that we'd be at the point where CG is just a seamless thing that you can't tell the difference between. And depending on how it's used, it is.
Yeah, I mean,
depending on what
it
kind of
can be.
texture. There's so many visual effects shots. If you look at the visual effects reel for something like The Wolf of Wall Street, a movie where you wouldn't think that there's a bunch of CG or compositing or, replace backgrounds or, elements that are entirely CG. But there are, and you can find this on YouTube or Vimeo, I forget where, but look up the visual effects reel for The Wolf of Wall Street, and you'll see the movie in an entirely different light. You'll be like, oh, wow, like actually there's a shit ton of visual effects shots here. And I think it's funny and kind of sad at the same time that those are never nominated for Oscars. And every single time it's the Oscar nomination for visual effects, it's what are the most obvious visual effects? What's the movie that had the most obvious visual effects?
The most.
It's like, that's
or
not,
just the most effects.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah.
I think it's incredible when you can't tell that they were there. That's an art in of itself, is not being able to tell that it's a visual effect and thinking that it's real, right? Like, is that not the goal for many films? So
I think we've reached that point and have been there for a very long time, but it's just the way that the studios, especially the Marvel movies, how they just run the productions where they're constantly changing their mind as during post-production and changing characters, costumes and all this sort of stuff right up to the last minute. So, a lot of the stuff that just ends up looking like just trash. And when you see that trailer for like the Marvels or whatever, oh my God, it just looks so cheap and awful. And it's like, you look at the budget is like $300 million. And then you look at The Creator, which was like 80 million, and it's just impeccable. Like everything is just so well done. It's just like ex machina kind of level, but on a much grander scale. So it all comes down to just knowing what you want ahead of time and planning for it, and not just like making it up as you go and
practicality.
Constantly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tool at the end of the day. It can so easily just be abused, and used as a cheat code for like your Meg 2's The Trench or whatever. It's like, well, we don't even really need to conceptualize anything. Just
You're hating on my Meg 2 The Trench.
Jason Statham's gonna come out, What'd you say?
Oh, bringing out the British accent again. I like it.